Hi folks, how are you doing? So the last round of the ACP Golden Classic tournament in Bergamo, Italy is over, and after the 7 rounds, Vassily from Philippines is the winner of the tournament, showing great performance, very solid and mature play by the Philippine young GM. In the last round, as we're gonna see right now, he played quite solid as in all the tournament against Sabino Brunello, who was white here. We saw this Nimzo invitation, and after knight f3, so plays d5, making it a semi-Slav defense after knight c3, c6. White plays e3, knight bd7, queen c2, bishop d6, and after bishop e2, we have this capture, winning a tempo. This is the Meran variation of the semi-Slav, very thoroughly analyzed and lots of theory, sharp games going on in this variation usually. Now there is the move b4 for instance, but bishop b7 is also the idea, and black will try to play in any moment c5 or e5 to untangle his position, unchain himself, and win some space, counterattack in the center. Meanwhile white castles, black does the same, rook d1, this is all theory, queen c7, and now that white plays e4, black is ready to counterattack with e5. Sabino takes, and knight takes, and knight d4 is played. Now bishop c5. There are some potential attacking themes going on with both mats, targeting the g4 square to later try to have something on f2. So h3 is a very normal and prophylactic move here. Queen b6, of course, attacking the knight, so bishop e3, now h3, we can see it's very useful. Neither knight can jump to g4 to harass this bishop, to disturb it. Rook a d8, the knight went to f5, offering a piece exchange. Bishop took, knight took, and after a couple of rook exchange, both players agreed this was a draw. They shake hands, and Vassily finishes a great tournament in the first place. Let us see the other games of the round, because they were much more exciting than this one. We had Emil Sutovsky against Zoltan Almasi, playing Rui Lopez. It was Almasi in the last round, in previous round, playing the Rui Lopez with white. Now he faces it as black and plays a6. We have very normal main line here, played thousands of times. Rook e1, now white is threatening to take on c6 and win a pawn, so b5, bishop b3, d6, defending the pawn, c3, black castles, h3, d4 directly is not that great because bishop g4 is supposed to be good for black. And now we have knight a5, the old Chigorin line. Bishop goes to c2 with literally thousands of elite GM's games having been played in this line, especially during all the 20th century, all that era of Soviet chess. This was very heavily analyzed. d4, queen c7, knight to d2. Pawns are exchanged here, and the knight is relocated back to c6, putting pressure on d4, forcing white to decide what he's going to do with his pawn. Advance it, exchange it, defend it. Sutovsky plays knight b3, a5, bishop e3, a4. This is still old theory. Knight bd2, and bishop is developed to d7. Now the most common approach here for white is to play something like rook c1. The queen goes away from the c file. Queen e2. Well, and we have mutual chances here. Interesting position for both players. Instead, Emil Sutovsky plays a3, controlling b4 square. Black plays rook a c8, putting lots of pressure on the c file. Bishop goes away, attacking b5. queen b8. And now white plays b4. Here black takes d4, knight takes d4. On long term, this d pawn is of course a weakness, but black has freed this e5 square for his knight, and now dynamic factors are much more important than a static factor like d6. So black jumps on e5 with his knight, centralizing a good knight here. Bishop is attacked, it goes to f1, and queen b7 attacking. Here on e4, white is very aggressive here, f4, and after knight c4, white takes. White takes with the knight. Bishop pawn takes, and each player has a passed pawn right now. Knight f5, but bishop takes, e takes, and now suddenly black has two passed pawns, connected passed pawns. Certainly this isn't very far from its starting position, but nevertheless it's a passed pawn. Although white has the bishop pair, we're gonna see white suffering here to show to find space, in fact, for the bishops. Now knight d4, this knight has a couple of jump squares possible. Bishop d4, d5, queen g4 with the subtle threat of checkmating black if he's careless enough. But of course bishop f6 is available. White took and black took, but after an intermediate check, king h2, now he takes with the knight. And still these couple of passed pawns are going to be decisive for black here, very strong. Meanwhile white's passed pawn is not going to move from this b4 square, so that shows us that dynamics are very important in chess. It's all about dynamics here. Queen f3, d4, g4. White tries to have something on the king side going on, otherwise he's going to be smashed in the center with these strong pawns. But d3, g5, black doesn't care about the knight, just keep the pawn pushing. He's attacking the rook now. Rook here keeps pushing the other pawn. Well, white took on f6, queen takes, but after bishop d3, c2, white has to give up the bishop so far to stop black from promoting. Rook takes. Now look at all the pieces, they are very well coordinated. The rook is strong on the second rank. The king is weak. White king is suddenly very weak on the second rank here. The pawn, of course, is a heavy, playing a major role here. The queen is well placed. So after a couple of moves, the rook comes in. Rook a b1, queen h4, queen to f3, and this move, white is absolutely cooked. After queen f1 and rook to g3, white resigns. I mean, what is going to white do? The back rank of black is secure. The queen is defending d8, so even if white takes this pawn, and this is upper pawn, but it's all about dynamics. Rook comes in, and there is no way to stop black from capturing h3, with checkmate coming very soon. The queen is defending d8, so there is no back rank checkmate. So there it goes, a good victory for Zoltan Almasi in the last round of this tournament. And finally we got the game between Jan Nepomniatchi and Daniel Vocaturo, a very interesting game and a very long one as well. We had a Scotch opening. Nepomniatchi is white and Daniele Vocaturo is black here. We have the bishop c5 variation. Knight here, bishop goes back. Knight c3, knight f6. And now there are, well, the most common moves are to play bishop g5, queen e2 to castle long, and play g3, bishop g2 is also very popular. But here Nepomniatchi plays really a strange move. I mean, it seems logical if you look at it more or less, but it hasn't been played that much. In my database there are only 2 games with this move. Hu Yifan versus Ding Liren, a Chinese battle, and Navara from Czech Republic versus Melkumian from Armenia, both having been played, both games from 2014, so seems to be kind of a new theoretical move, this one, or something. Well, black keeps playing very logical, d6, bishop g5, Now knight e5 seems logical, doesn't it? Just hitting the queen. Queen must go back to e2. Now h6, bishop back, and knight g6, hitting the bishop again, bishop back to g3. And certainly black cannot complain about the opening. He has developed all the pieces. He has some decent control of the center and not weaknesses at all. Castles short and white castles long. It seems that there could be a mutual attacks here, with white attacking on the king side, black attacking on the queen side. Rook e8, f3, defending, solidifying e4, knight h5, bishop f2, and f5 here. I mean, there is the pin on the e file, so f5 seems logical. Bishop takes on b6, a takes, and the queen goes away from this dangerous e file. Black takes his time to take it. Bishop check, bishop to e6. There it goes, the bishop exchange here, rook takes. And now rook he1. Of course, you cannot take, the rook on e6 is hanging, so white finally got some development, not bad, and well, more or less a dynamically equal position. Black has this a file for his rook, and so in interesting position. Black goes back to f6, f takes e4, material equality is back, although this pawn is isolated and could be potentially weak, as we will see. Queen d7, knight to d4 is hitting the rook. Back here, king b1 is good prophylactic move. Queen f7, putting some pressure on a2. b3, stopping that. And now rook a5, a beautiful move. I mean, here the rook could go here, the other rook could go here, doubling up rooks in either E or A file. Rook f1, and there it goes. The rook comes from a5, as we saw, to e5, putting pressure on e4. Rook f3, knight h4, rook back, repeating moves, but Nepomniatchi is playing. He plays king b2. Queen goes away from the pin, and knight f5, queen to e6. Knight back to g3, a long maneuvering games, as you can see here. Knight e7, knight to e7, not to d7. Once again, white tries to put a rook here, maybe double up, but now b5, black gets his pawns finally rolling on the queen side to try to get something against his white king. a3, rook c5, h3, and queen to e5, with some pin here against the knight, some attacking possibilities. Rook e1, and very beautiful and spectacular moves, in fact. Knight from e to d5. There is a pin, of course, the knight cannot take on d5, but the pawn neither can take on d5 because the rook is hanging on e1. So double pin here against white. Rook e2 was played, but there it goes, a very strong move indeed. Black here has, and that's knight takes c3. It seems there is not much going on after rook takes c3, but rook a8, and suddenly this king is really feeling vulnerable. I mean, this queen is tied up to the defense of this rook. The rook is pinned, cannot move, and there is certainly some pressure on white's position. I mean, in fact, the engine is saying this is really horrible for white, like -5 or something. I don't see exactly how black is winning on the spot, but it seems really this is a very, very good position for black. Let us try and see what happens here. Rook from e to e3 was played, defending c3, and it seems Vocaturo missed the very strong idea here, which is, well, he played rook a6, which kind of loses big advantage he seems to have. The very spectacular move here is to play b4. Of course, you're attacking the pinned rook. You're threatening to taking with the pawn, and whenever you take it, this is huge material advantage, and the attack keeps going on. So that would be checkmate 0-1. So the critical line would be to take on b4, and now black has a very, very impressive move: rook c to a5, sacrificing the rook. There it goes. Otherwise, you're threatening checkmate. I mean, checkmate on the second and first rank. And if white takes, black takes with the queen. He has sacrificed the whole rook. It's white to move, but there is no way to stop the white king from being checkmated. The queen is going on, even if the rook moves whenever this is checkmate, because the queen is also covering c3. So very, very spectacular possibility that Daniele Vocaturo had here to play this great b4 move. But instead he played rook a6, which, well, keeps some advantage, but is not that strong, it seems. Now queen d3, rook a8, he really seems to have missed his chance. Knight f1, the rook goes back to e8 to put pressure on e4. Knight d2, c6, rook f3, and now he attacks with d5. There is rook f5, but black can force the exchange of pieces here on c3. Queen takes, rook takes, king takes, and he takes a pawn on e4. So there it goes, an endgame where black is up a pawn. The king d4, king f7. The rooks are also exchanged. And we have a long knight endgame ahead, with Vocaturo being pawn up and trying to win. e2, thanks. White is thankfully has this knight to guard the e1 square, but it's of course a big advantage for black to have this pawn here, to have this knight tied up to the defense of this square. So white hurries up back, knight d5, g3 to stop the knight from jumping to f4. Now b4 takes, knight takes, king defends the pawn, c5. Very easy to understand the ideas here. Black just defends weaknesses, attacks weaknesses, and white tries to defend them. King d2, now kings come in. Knight e1, king goes near. Now king takes, but at the cost of allowing black king taking the opposition here, being very active. King d2, b6, and after king e2, knight to c6. c3, knight a5, of course attacking b pawn, so b4, c takes, knight c6, again attacking the pawn. Knight d3 to defend it, check, king d2, and black king goes in here, g4, king g3, now king e3, but check, and the knight goes to a3. Knight e5, king takes on h3, king to d3, king g3, and king e4. White king is trying to go this way to collect these black pawns, and if he can do that without losing too much time, he will be certainly drawing the game. But black is on time now, attacking this pawn, b5. Well, I'm back to attack it from here, king f5, and knight takes on b5. King g6, attack now on both the pawn and the knight, so this is another pawn gone for white, and there is 3 pawns advantage right now for black. Of course, white is going to take some of them, but if any of them promotes, of course, if it will be enough. Now knight d5, of course white's taking b6, but black brings his knight back, knight takes b6, and knight to e6, defending very important g7 pawn. Knight c4, a check, king takes g7, a last hope for black to win the game, goes on, h5, knight d2 check, king g2, knight e4, and the pawn keeps rolling slowly but steadily. If white takes here, there is no chance to stop the pawn, so king f5, h3, king g4, h2, now knight g3, defending the promotion square, but after the beautiful knight g7 move, threatening to put the knight either on h5 or f5, and the game is absolutely lost for white, as this pawn now is going to be promoted after this aforementioned move. So there it goes, a very long, hard-fought battle in the last round of this ACP Golden Classic tournament, in which we saw Daniele Vocaturo win the last round game and Wesley Sol winning the tournament with an awesome and very solid performance. There it goes. Thanks for watching.